at the National Latino Research Center. Jose Gonzalez is the head of FIOB, Frente Indígena de Organizaciones Binacionales. Jose González encabeza FIOB, o Frente Indígena de estas organizaciones binacionales, y un arduo luchador de trabajadores agrícolas migrantes. Marta Alvarado es veterana de la Marina de los Estados Unidos, gracias por su servicio. Una maestra y ahora miembro de la mesa directiva del Distrito Escolar de Vista. Marta Alvarado is a Marine Corps veteran. We thank her for her service. She's a school teacher and now serves on the Vista School Board. And of course, last but not least, Margie Castellano. Margie es una productora y luchadora por el ambiente. También fue la candidata demócrata para el Senado de California del Distrito 36 en el 2018. She is a producer and an environmental advocate. She was also the Democratic candidate for the California State Senate District 36 in 2018. Your panel, ladies and gentlemen, su panel. And of course, sin que pase más el tiempo, without further ado, Dr. Arcela Núñez Álvarez.
Muy buenas tardes. Welcome, Senator Sanders, to our Vista home.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Whoa, a lot of people here. Thank you. Yes, we surely can. Okay, please, everybody, take a seat. And I'll tell you, before I introduce our wonderful panel, and I want to thank all of the people outside who couldn't get inside. Thank you very much for being here as well. There is a mythology that goes around this country today that says the economy is doing just fine. Everybody is doing well. Well, I think we're going to learn tonight that not only here in Vista, but all over this country, that is absolutely not the case. And here is the truth. Truth is that if you are in the top 1%, for all of you who are millionaires and billionaires in this room, not too many of you, huh? Those people are doing very well. But the reality is that for half of our country, 50% of our country, people are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what that means? You know what that means. You are living paycheck to paycheck. And I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, so I know what that means as well. And what it means is that if your car breaks down and you can't afford to fix it, you don't get to work. And if you don't get to work, you lose your job. And if you lose your job, you have no income. And if you have no income, your children go hungry. That is the reality for millions of people today. And the reality also is that many of our people worried to death that somebody in the family is going to get sick. And they worry about that because they cannot afford to go to the doctor when somebody gets sick. Or if, God forbid, somebody ends up in the hospital, they may be one of the 500,000 Americans every year who go bankrupt because they cannot afford to pay their medical bills. And they worry that when their kids or somebody in the family gets sick, they cannot afford the cost of prescription drugs because we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. So what this campaign is about, in a sense, what this meeting is about, is to figure out how we create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, you are living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. You know that? But millions of our people are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they are living in poverty because the wages that they get are starvation wages. So what we say as loudly as we can, and I'm pretty loud, is that if you work 40 or 50 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. We're going to raise the federal minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. And we know that when workers come together and bargain collectively, they get higher wages and better benefits. That's why we're going to grow the union movement in America, make it easier for workers to get into unions. And we know, we in this room know, that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And that regardless of the income of your family, you have a right to go to the doctor when you are sick and not have to worry about paying the bill, because health care is a right, not a privilege. And we know that in a complicated global economy and in a competitive economy, all of our kids, whether they're black or white or Latino, rich or poor, have the right to get a higher education. And that is why we will make public colleges and universities tuition free. And at a time when some 45 million Americans are struggling with oppressive student debt, we're going to cancel that debt. No more student debt. And then there are people who say, well, Bernie, that's a good idea, but, you know, these are expensive programs. And they're right, they are. How are we going to pay for them? And I will tell you exactly how we're going to pay for them. We're going to end the grotesque and unfair level of income and wealth inequality in America today. I want you to know, and you don't see this much on television or in the newspapers, but today, while millions of our people are forced to work 2 or 3 jobs trying to get by on 10, 11 bucks an hour, in America today, 3 people, the 3 wealthiest people, own more wealth than the bottom half of the American society. The top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. and 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Meanwhile, there are large, profitable corporations like Amazon that made over $10 billion in profit last year and did not pay one nickel in federal income tax. So, we have got a lot of work to do in front of us, and we are up against some very, very powerful people who like the status quo, who like what's going on now because the rich are getting much richer. Corporations are enjoying huge profits. But our job is to change the government and change the economy so that it works for all of us, works for the working people of this country, not just billionaires. So what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to give the microphone over to our wonderful panelists, and they're going to chat, and then I need to hear from you. We'll have some microphones circulating around the room, and I want you to tell us what is going on in your lives. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. But it is important that people stand up and speak the truth about their lives. All right? Because when one person stands up and says, I can't make it on $11 an hour, when one person stands up and says, I cannot find affordable housing, when one person stands up and says, I can't afford to go to the doctor, millions of people start nodding their heads because that is the reality facing a whole lot of people in this country. But we don't bring about change unless people stand up, tell the truth, and are prepared to take on very powerful special interests so that together we change this country and we make it work for all of us. That's what tonight is about. So now let me introduce to you Dr. Arcela Nunez-Alvarez, who is a research director at the National Latino Research Center. Doctor, come on up.
In this community, we come together as a community this evening to organize an event like this in 3 days. And the reason we are coming together is because we want to welcome our friends, our allies, and every person that is fighting for justice. So, bienvenido, Bernie y amigos. I'm going to share a piece of my story, not because I think I'm special or unique in any way. I'm going to share a piece of my life and my story because there are millions of stories like mine. I am a proud daughter of this community in North County because this community welcomed me and welcomed my family when I was a little girl looking for refuge. My 5 sisters and I arrived to North County with my mom in 1981 with nothing but the clothes that we were wearing. My father was a farm worker who used to travel seasonally to work in the fields all over the county until one day he didn't return home. He left my mom with the monumental task of feeding 6 daughters in an economy that had no work. In that moment of desperation, mi madre, Eva, who is sitting behind me, decided to travel north from the state of Michoacán in search of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. My mom's courage to migrate with 6 daughters, escaping hunger, was our salvation. We got here to North County with an empty stomach, not a single dollar in our pockets, but we had a heart overflowing with ganas that every immigrant has and the hope of a better tomorrow. And that's how we started our new life in this community. Without wasting a single second after our arrival, my mom figured out where the nearest school was located, and she started looking for work. She found work in a local factory, working as a seamstress, many long hours for minimum wage, but yet making enough to ensure that she paid rent and bought groceries for 6 very hungry niñas that had just come from Michoacán. Her sacrifice made it possible for me and for my sisters to get an education, but most importantly, and much more lasting, to grow roots in a community that we now call home. This was made possible because of education. Education is a critical door for us, and I want to thank Senator Sanders for the education plan he is advocating, not only to provide child care and universal pre-K for all children, but also to take care of so many of our college students. In this community, we believe in the human right to education, to health, human dignity, period. The story of the space where we're all sitting today started about 7 years ago, when a team of people who care very deeply about our humanity decided to start making that dream of ensuring that every person's human rights are respected. We began not only to dream it, but to actually act on it from the bottom up where our people are at. We organized and deployed an army of college students, community educators, everyone who cares about our community, and we began promoting education across all ages. When you come to our class, and this is our classroom, we bring the entire family together. We have parents learning alongside grandparents. We have youth learning with their grandparents. We are teaching English, we're teaching Spanish. We are learning about US history, about Mexican history. But most importantly, we are a community that is preserving the wisdom of our community to nourish us for generations to come. As a teacher myself, I am inspired to teach every evening. I donate my time. I volunteer. And I see many of you who join us every week because I see the glow in the face of that elder that never went to school simply because of where they were born. They didn't have that privilege. I see many of them right here, like Don Jose. They come, they learn. Senator, I introduce you to our community. I am so humbled to let you know what makes this community special. We work very hard. We are the hardest working people. We are immigrants. We are citizens, but we don't pay attention to those labels. We work tirelessly every day to make our community better. We make sure that we are contributing to the local, the regional, the state, the national, and transnational economies. We grow food that feeds the world. We do landscaping, we clean. So this is the community, and we leave the simple message. We invite Senator Sanders and anyone else that wants to fight with our community to join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arcela. Please welcome Jose Gonzalez. Jose.
Muchas gracias a todas y a todos, señoras y señores, por estar con nosotros hoy. Bienvenido, señor Sander, senador Sander. ¿Qué les puedo platicar? Arcela ha dicho todo lo que la vida de cada uno de nosotros ha marcado en este país. What else can I tell you? Arcela had spoken everything that inspired, everything that happened to our life. I prepared my speech, and I'm gonna read it to you. I came to this country at a young age with nothing but the clothes I have on. In my pocket, I had few pesos. I spoke no English. To finding a job in this country was very hard. I was able to find a work in the strawberry fields. I picked strawberry to tomatoes and anything in between. I worked very hard for a little bit of pay they pay us. The condition we work weren't any better. For long days, long hours, on the scoring heat, and no access to water, not even a bathroom. I despite all those challenges I faced, I did everything that I could and moved forward in my life because this is the land of opportunity. And I was determined to have a better life here. I went to night school education to learn English. I despite all the chances I faced, and I was one of the few achieved all this. Not everyone is lucky. Some die trying to cross the border. Those that are lucky to make it have a hard time. Some are taking advantage when we come to work and they get paid below the minimum wage. We get tricked with the immigration to don't say nothing, to don't fight for nothing, to don't get paid. The basic right and public information are nothing that lack into the Latino community. The communication between the law enforcement and the people are supposed to serve isn't any better. We should be working aside with them so we can live in peace instead of fear them. We need to create a better place for our youth. There aren't anyone who will be, the youth will be the one that live in this world. So we will think that we need to create a better community for them. We are here to create a better future for our youth and give them the opportunity that we can get. I'm here today to support Bernie Sanders. I believe on his idea, what he's fighting for. He's not only fighting to make this country better, he's fighting for you and for me. And in return, we should all fight for him. I'm a proud father or a proud dad. And I'm going to leave you with this quote that my son told me yesterday. The greatest human act is to inspire. What we will inspire with our action. How we will be remembered. Who we know and how we will do it. Staying silent and doing nothing, or let our voice to be heard and make the change for a better tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And please remember to register as a Democrat and vote in the Democratic primary that coming in March. Let's work hard and let's make the change. Sí se puede. Yes, we can.
Thank you, Jose. Please welcome Martha Alvarado.
Hello, Vista. My name is Martha Alvarado. I'm a Vista school board member. I'm a teacher, a Marine Corps veteran, and a proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. My mother, Martha, was born in Jalisco, and my father, Alfonso, is from Chihuahua. They both came to the U.S. as teens. They were the dreamers of the 1960s. When my mom first arrived, she worked in the fields. Later, she worked as a housekeeper, a home health care worker, and a nanny, sometimes working multiple jobs. Her work ethic and grit set the example for my siblings and I. My dad was a 43-year Teamster working at a cardboard factory in Los Angeles until he retired. They were able to achieve the American dream of home ownership and becoming citizens. My mom would say to me often, Martha, the sacrifices that I make for you is so that all of you could have a better life. Work hard, get your education, and get ahead in life. So I did. I joined the Marine Corps to fund my college education, becoming the first in my family to graduate from college. That's why I support Bernie Sanders' plan to provide free public college. It will open the doors for others to achieve their dreams as well. I know my family's story is not unique or exceptional. Many immigrants flee poverty, violence, the lack of opportunities to search for a better life. Like me, Bernie Sanders' parents were immigrants. He knows firsthand the sacrifices of immigrants and how immigrants add to the greatness to the fabric of our nation. His plan to give DACA recipients a pathway to citizenship is compassionate and it's just. Bernie also would restore the Voting Rights Act to end voter suppression for people of color. He would enact criminal justice reform because he knows how our criminal and judicial system has targeted people of color, many who are immigrants. His Medicare for All plan will ensure that everyone has access to health care and the medication that they need. Last, I support Bernie because he plans to address the racial wealth gap and the gender pay gap, empowering communities just like Vista to achieve our dreams. In closing, I support Bernie because he supports working people. Yes, and he's one of us. He's one of us. I've been asked to read this beautiful poem about the borderlands by a poet and a professor at Miracosta College. She's from Calexico, and the poem is called Calexico. My city is made of people who know the taste of sun on their backs, how the men and women behind sweat-licked bandanas can beg the earth to be a mother and have it give birth to a field of harvest, ask it to be a womb again and again. How hard work speaks through fields of lettuce, lined in rows like green snakes with straight spines. And this is how we know nourishment. How my city is a mouthful of haystack, stray dogs, tractors, wind canals. How they dance their own dance against hot wind and blue sky, where trees break through drought and offer their shade-covering branches. And we cool our throats on raspados, front yard sprinklers, imaginations that give us gallons of ocean, yet we still bare our feet to the warm ground to remind ourselves that we are still children of the sun. How these are the tattoos we wear and call home. How my city knows to be a kitchen, how we invite a stranger to the dinner table and call them familia. And the hands of brown women labor their recipes from grandmothers to make a meal taste like the magic that came from years of practice, tired elbows, burnt pots, laughter, broken hearts, reclaimed history, prayer, call what we make prayer, maize and beans summoned by the spices that have kept us alive. And yet my city, too, knows loss, metal fence, broken land, broken families, a president's insult, two-legged coyotes too familiar with thirst, how our desert be made in God's image, and it too invites a desperate body to know God too soon. How my city without will can dress itself a graveyard and strip a body of its name. How we lost count, see more John Does ghosting our land, caught between American dreamer and indigenous footstep. But my city knows healing, to be a door to a church. How we burn our candles, stain glass our saints, push our rosaries to their fullest potential because we are the people who don't break easy. We stand like mountains and we sing our faith with two tongues, with fresh cut marigolds. We offer pan dulce to our loved ones who are no longer able to kiss our cheeks. How we start and end our sentences with si Dios quiere, because if God wills it, we are the scars and its stories of how we chose breath. How after the earthquake, my city still trembles, our hips and knees dancing until the sky grows tired.
Thank you, Martha. Let me introduce Margie Castellano. Margie.
Buenas tardes, amigos. ¿Cómo están? Es un placer estar con ustedes. Conozco a muchos de ustedes. My name is Margie Castellano. Hola. My name is Margie Castellano. I am a proud immigrant from the land of the Incas, Peru. I come from a family of public servants. My mother was an elementary school teacher, and my father was a civil engineer with the Department of Transportation. Through the work of my parents, I witnessed the importance of education and protecting our environment. hand by hand. After working for 33 years, my mother retired with a miserable pension of $300 a month. Can you imagine that? Back in Peru, it's nothing. Few years ago, I came to this country with just one dream, to close a business deal. I just wanted to promote to Peru and bring a lot of people from the United States to Peru. I successfully developed Peru as a destination for viewing Halley's Comet. Maybe some people here remember Halley's Comet. Later on, I had the opportunity to work in a documentary for PBS with 50 scientists from the Smithsonian Institute, studying the unique species in the rainforest of Peru. As a documentary film producer, I used my medium to advocate environmental positions. These films influence environmental policy around the world. Through my work, I have seen glaciers in the Andes recede 50% since the 1970s. I have seen the effects of El Niño in the Peruvian coastline and in the Galapagos Islands of Ecuador. I have witnessed how the Amazon rainforest is being destroyed by the corporate greed of oil, petroleum, gold, and logging industry. It's real. And now I see alarming trends in our coastlines communities. A couple of years ago, I was evacuated from my place in Oceanside due to the Lila fire. Do you remember that? A couple of years ago. We are facing the biggest social injustice of our generation. Millions of low-income people, many of them communities of color like us, tend to live in the geographical areas that are most impacted by climate crisis. In 2016, inspired by Bernie Sanders, I became his delegate at the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. And you all are going to do exactly the same in 2020, right? And last year, I ran for a state senate for our 36th district. And how many of you are going to run for office in 2020? Most of you, right? We need an inspired leader that will make education a priority and will ensure that our communities of color are prepared for extreme weather events. He's committed to making healthcare a human right and will ensure a more just and humane immigration policy. And Bernie Sanders understands that it will take all of us standing with him to build the world we deserve. I am so honored to introduce my candidate for President of the United States of America, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Okay. All right. What I'd like to do, no, thank you. Thank you. All right, this is what, I want to thank all of the panelists for their great presentations. Thank you guys very much. Okay. What I want to do now, tell you what we'll do. I'd like to ask questions of you, and then you ask questions of me or the members of the panel. That fair enough? All right, I want to start off on one issue. A lot of people in this community and a lot of people all over this country are struggling with low wages and have a difficult time affording the housing that they and their families need. That true? All right, who wants to talk a little bit about what it means to work for low wages, what it means not to be able to afford the housing that your family needs? I see a hand. All right, we got a couple of, do we have people with microphones? All right, there's a woman over there. Stand up, please. Woman in blue. Okay, get that mic to her. How many mics do we have? Do we have, all right, you stay here. Or you stay on this side, she'll stay there. Yes, hold the mic in your own hands. Okay.
Hello,
Your name
Senator
is?
Sanders. I wanted to talk to you about the fact that I'm a rideshare driver. And
I'll tell you what, I would like to, I'm going to get to that, but I'd like to focus right now on what low wages and unaffordable housing mean to the community. I'll get back to you. How's that?
Yes.
Okay, good. I want low wages. I see a woman right here.
Good afternoon. I am a college student, and to me, a low wage means I have to work 40 plus hours, sometimes 50, in order to make ends meet, and sometimes even then, I can't really afford to pay all my expenses, medical bills, help my mom out with the living wages. We live in a 2-bedroom, but I mean, it's 4 of us, and sometimes we can barely make ends meet, and I have to overdraft my bank account at some points just to pay my bills on time, if that is even the scenario.
Are you going to school now?
Yes, I am.
All right. So did I hear you correctly say that you're working 40 hours a week while you're going to school?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, your first name is?
Julia?
Julia?
Yes.
All right, Julia, stay there, Julia. All right, Julia touches on an issue we don't talk enough about. We say we want our young people, like Julia, to get the best education they can. I don't know, and Julia, you'll tell me, how do you do your studies if you're working 40 hours a week to bring in money that your family needs? Doesn't it impact your ability to learn?
Yes, it does a lot. I sleep 2 hours sometimes. I have to drive my whole family around to their jobs and my job and school. And sometimes, it's either you sleep or you don't sleep. It's just one of those things that I have become accustomed to, and it's painful because I work hard so my siblings don't have to put in that much work themselves, so they don't have to suffer what I'm going through right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Julia. All right. So everybody heard what Julia said. It's a young woman who's trying to do the right thing. She's going to school, and while she's going to school, she's working 40 hours a week. I think that in the wealthiest country on earth, when our kids go to school, they should be able to focus on their studies and not have to work 40 hours a week. Okay, I'd like a little bit more discussion. We're going to go over a lot of areas, but I'd like to stay on the issue low wages, the cost of housing, how it impacts you and your family. Anybody else want to make a comment on that? All right, I see a hand right there. Young man, stand up. Let's get him a mic. The mic is on the way. Your name is?
I'm Justin.
Justin?
I've lived in Vista for 8 years now, and I just graduated college, but I too had to work 4 jobs. And while doing that, there were several
Did
times.
you have to work 4 jobs while you were going to college?
Yeah, and I was on the quarter system, so I slept 2 to 3 hours and commuted on top of that because I couldn't afford rent at my university. They wanted like $1,200 to $1,800 for a room, and I made $11 an hour. Well, now it's $12.50, but at the time it was $11. So I'd be lucky to clear after taxes $1,000. So that's $200 short of rent. And that didn't take into account how I had to pay for my own insurance, how I had to pay for food, how I had to pay for gas. And then if something happened with anything that I owned, for example, my car or my computer, which I need for school, I was down. So it was nearly impossible to live. And if it weren't for people letting me crash surf or living with my parents with free rent or commuting, I wouldn't have been able to go to school.
Okay. Justin, congratulations on your efforts. Thank you. Okay, low wages, affordable housing. What is the housing situation around here? I see some hands over there. All right, woman in the yellow sweater.
Hi, my name is Tonantzin Limon, and I'm a mother of 2. Me and my husband both work full-time jobs. He's going to school, he's a veteran, and if it wasn't for the family giving us a place to live, we wouldn't be able to afford housing right now. me and him both work full-time. He works up to 60 hours a week sometimes. And we've been lucky enough they're giving us the opportunity to save up to buy a home. Or I work for the county, he works for the Navy, and we still can't afford it.
So let me see if I got it right. Both of you are working full-time,
Yes,
and you cannot afford an apartment or a house. Is that the case?
correct.
Okay. All right.
With 2 children.
With 2 children. Okay. Thank you. All right. Other comments on that issue? Okay, I see. There's what right there. Daddy, to your right. There's a woman in the. Yeah.
Hi, Bernie. I just wanted to say, as a mom, my daughter had to migrate 7 hours north to Mammoth, California, because she couldn't find a job in 2008. So we miss her a lot. But recently, we found out that she was suffering for 2 years with pain in her stomach because she couldn't afford to not work her 2 jobs in Mammoth, California, a very wealthy place, because the housing was so high and her rent was like $700. So finally we convinced her, come home, please come home. She had surgery last week, finally. Her gallbladder was removed. Doctor said it was nasty, that she really was suffering a lot of pain. And I asked her, well, why didn't you just take care of it? You've gone to 4 hospital visits. This is just so expensive. Now you're in debt. Your credit is ruined. She said, Mama, I couldn't take time off. I had to pay my rent, and I couldn't afford to go. So as a parent, and I'm an immigrant, my mom worked in Carnations, raised 10 children, and we're great. We live fine. We can afford our house. Luckily, she's got us. But I feel like, what would she do without me? You know, for the grace of God go I.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, right here. Yep. Okay, get a mic.
This is still about concerning the minimum wage. So a few weeks ago in the House, the bill to raise the wage to $15 an hour passed, and I think it's to raise it by like 2022. So say Mitch McConnell does actually let it go in the Senate and passes. When you become president, are you going to make it like before 2022 that we
Yes.
reach? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yes, the House bill became, in order to get some of the votes that they needed, they had to even push it back a little bit more. Look, at the end of the day, especially in communities where rents are so high and housing is so hard to come by, even $15 an hour is not much, is it? No. So what we're trying to do as quickly as we can establish $15 as the minimum, but I hope that we can go higher than that in years to come. All right, who's got a question? I want to thank all of you for your comments. Let me get a question addressed to me.
Senator.
Okay, yeah.
My name is Matt Corrales, and I'm a prison survivor. The reason I'd like to talk about that is because of 2 economic issues here.
Question.
1, in prisons, we are not entitled to any kind of minimum wage. We are basically slave labor in most of the United States. I know, that is a damn shame. The second thing is, we're not getting adequate mental health care. We're getting punishment, punishment, punishment. And a lot of your opponents have made a career out of punishing people. How are we going to change that under a Sanders administration?
Okay. All right, let me ask you, that's a great question. Your first name is? First name? Michael?
Oh, Matt. Sorry.
Matt, okay.
Minimum wage laws and prisons.
I got it. I got the question. Okay. I want to ask people, how many people in this room have friends, family, or themselves who have been impacted by the criminal justice system? Raise your hand. Whoa. That's a lot of people. Okay. So let me answer Matt's question by telling you what you already know, and that is the criminal justice system is not only broken, but it is significantly racist. in terms of going after people of color, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans. So what are we going to do about it? And I'll get to your questions. Number one, the first goal that we have is to keep people out of jail. All right? That's the obvious goal. We already have more people in jail than any other country on earth. So how do you do that? Well, what you do, it seems to me, is instead of spending $80 billion a year on locking people up, we invest in our young people in education and in job training. All right? If we can make certain that kids have a good education or they have a job when they got out of school, the likelihood of them ending up in jail is much, much less. Second of all, if people get out of jail, we have a very high rate of recidivism. People get out of jail, they don't have any money, they don't have any jobs, they don't have any education, they don't have any housing, and lo and behold, we're shocked when they commit a crime and they end up back in jail. So what we have got to do is make certain that when people leave jail, they leave jail with the education, with the housing, with the resources they need to make it in their society. Third of all, in my view, corporations should not be making money by locking people up. Which is why we will end, through executive order, private prisons and private detention centers. So, Mac, to answer your question, instead of paying people starvation wages, by the way, which takes jobs away from people on the outside, okay, what we're going to do is make sure those people who are in jail, who are going to be released, are well-trained and have the education they need to survive in the outside world. Okay, thank you.
Senator, we have time for 2 more questions. There's a question on this side.
I'm sorry, who said that? Where's the... Yeah. Okay, yeah. Let her hold the microphone. Yeah, put it to mouth. Your name is? Just hold it up.
My name is Edith Albelais, and I'm a resident of San Marcos here in California. And
Edith, hold that mic very close to your mouth.
Okay, así.
That's it.
Okay. ¿Me puede traducir usted? Quiero preguntarle al senador qué consejos nos da a las personas para resistir la agenda del presidente actual.
Senator, I'd like to ask you, what advice would you give us to resist the current administration?
Good. Edith, that was just the question I was going to ask. All right? So I'm going to answer you. I will answer your question in 1 second. All right? I want to ask a question. We discussed before we came up here, the panel and I had a little chat. And I asked the panel what the impact of Trump's immigration policies and his rhetoric has on this community, okay? So I'm going to answer Edith's question, but before I do that, I want to hear from you. You have a president who during his campaign said that Mexicans are criminals and they're rapists. Remember that? Who talked about throwing millions of people out of this country, who has federal employees now making raids and intimidating people in this community and in many communities all over this country. What impact, I'm going to answer Edith's question, but I want to get your views on what all of that rhetoric and those policies have on people in this community and how it especially impacts the children. What I heard from our panelists is that there are kids who go into school who are traumatized, who are very, very fearful that when they get home from school, one of their parents may not be at home. And it is hard for me to imagine what that means to the well-being of a child in terms of stress and anxiety. All right, so let's talk about that for a minute, and then I'm going to answer Edith's question. Who wants to comment on that? Okay, we've got a gentleman right here. We'll get that mic.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. My wife is Mexican. We've been married 10 years. She's still undocumented. She has no avenue to any pathway of being documented. We have an 8 and a 10-year-old, and they know that mom can drop them off in the morning and can be in jail in the evening. If mom calls me and says, I need you to go get the kids because she's busy, if mom's not with me, they're anxious, they're scared. When's mom coming home? Put her on the phone.
They are holding this fear all of the time of what could happen to their mom.
Absolutely. My 8-year-old came to me the other night, and he said, I've been investigating. And I said, what have you been investigating? I found out that when I turn 36, I can be president. And he said...
Tell him it's 35, actually.
I did. But he said 36, but I did correct him. He said, since Donald Trump hates my mom, I'm going to become president, and I'm going to help all Mexicans, and I'm going to help my mom, and I'm going to help all my uncles. My 8 and my 10-year-olds should not be having to deal with that. We now have them in therapy because it's gotten progressively worse with the rhetoric and with the way people react to the work I do, which is working with immigrants. And, you know, it's the hardest thing in the world to try and calm the anxiety of my 2 children. My older son's going to graduate college next year. But because my wife can't travel out of this triangle we're trapped in, she won't be able to go to the graduation up north. That's how it affects our family. And there's thousands of other mixed status families, if not tens of thousands, going through the same thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I see a hand right here. Yep, can we get a mic? Please stand up and give us your name.
Hi, Bernie. My name is Shelley. Thank you so much for your tireless effort. I want to say that the first thought that came to my mind was the El Paso massacre and how many people who were affected were too afraid to ask for help or to find out where the missing families were when they were just shopping at Walmart. Thank you.
So what Shelley is saying is that people, we think, I don't know if it's verified or not, but we believe that undocumented people who were shot at and sometimes wounded were afraid to go forward because they are undocumented. And what we do know, absolutely, is that women are beaten, people have serious problems, but they do not go to the officials because the fear is that they are undocumented and they could be deported. How crazy is that? All right, I want to talk a little bit more. If somebody wants to broaden it to what it means to be an undocumented worker. Okay, there you go. Hold that mic.
Thank you, Senator Bernie Sanders. You are my inspiration, and you are the reason why I follow politics. And
thank you.
You are my inspiration. I just want to say, I've been in this country for 29 years, and I waited in the immigration system 22 years to get my permanent residence. And I got my residence this past December. And it was hard because the U.S. government told me I couldn't get married. The U.S. government told me I couldn't have kids. And the U.S. government told me that I had to be the best that I could be, and I couldn't work to become anything. But despite of that, I become a community leader. I'm a teacher. I am an anthropologist. I'm a photographer. I'm an artist. And I stand with all of the immigrants. And I know your fear. Yo sé lo que es tener miedo. Yo sé lo que pasa cuando la migración te sigue. Yo sé lo difícil que es tener que esconderse. Pero no se den por vencidos. Nosotros vamos a salir adelante. Y lo único que tenemos que hacer es decirle sí al senador Bernie Sanders. Y hay que luchar para que él sea nuestro presidente. La justicia no es una idea radical. Justice is not a radical idea. Thank you, Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Okay. I see a hand way in the back. Woman in the white blouse. We got our mic. All right, mic is coming.
Hi, sir. It's a privilege to be here.
Okay, hold that mic close to your mouth.
Okay. It's a privilege to be here with all of you. I don't have any special story. I'm a Mexican citizen, an American citizen. I came into this country because I married my New Jersey Jew, which I was. But something that it's traumatized me all this time, even though I recognize I had a privileged life. We need to take those innocent angels out of cages. That is killing me. Please, please, all of us, we need to do something. You cannot have beautiful angels in cages. They belong to their parents, not to cages. Please, do something. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let me say just a few words on that. It seems to me that when you are President of the United States, you have a sacred obligation of bringing people together, not demonizing one group of people. And it is a very sad state of affairs, and something that I honestly never believed in my lifetime that I would see, that we have a President of the United States who is a racist, who is a xenophobe, who is a sexist, who is a religious bigot, and who is a pathological liar. All right? I never believed that I would see that, and I say that not just as a senator from Vermont, not just as a presidential candidate, but just as an American. I never believed that that could happen. So I want to answer Edith's question and maybe some of your other questions. First of all, what do? We have 11 million people who are undocumented in this country today. Many, many, many of them have lived here for a long time. Many of them are hardworking and contributing very much to their communities and to our economy. What we must do, and I believe there is the political will to do it, is move forward toward comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. Okay? And when we do that, and when we begin that process, your wife and your children can breathe a sigh of relief. They're not going to have to look over their shoulders. Okay? And we will end these ICE raids on community after community. And on our first day, we will reestablish the legal protection for the 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. And to answer your question, America is not and must never be about putting children in cages. It must never be about grabbing children, little babies, from the arms of their mothers. When people are traveling 1,500 miles, when a mom with her son or daughter is traveling 1,500 dangerous miles in order to avoid violence in Honduras or Guatemala, and is coming to our border, we must understand that these are not criminals and not be treated like criminals. So we need to develop a humane border policy which treats those people who make that trek with the dignity and respect that desperate people need. Okay? All right. All right, I'll get back, but I want to ask you guys another question. Tell me about health care. Can anybody find a doctor and go to the doctor anytime they want without any problems? All right, let me hear about that. Let me hear about health care. I see a hand way in the back. You see that gentleman there? If some of you guys have questions, ask it too, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, tell me about health care.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm on Medicare, and I absolutely love it. And I like your plan about Medicare for all, phasing it down in ages, 1 year to 55, then
Right.
45. I think that's great. However, one of the things that I do love about my Medicare plan is my Advantage plan, where I pay a little bit and I get the additional monies to pay what I don't have to take out of my pocket. And I think that if you were to be flexible on your plan, which says eliminate the Advantage plans, I think it would be more politically acceptable to the world or to the country, and it would also give us, the people who would be on those plans, the ability to either go for the public option of an Advantage plan or go for a private company.
Okay. Let me just say this. What we are advocating will cover everything you have on Medicare Advantage. There's nothing that they have that we will not cover, and you're not going to have to take out your pocket, not going to take out your wallet to do that. What we are talking about when we talk about Medicare for all, and I want you to know that the insurance companies and the drug companies will likely spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to distort and lie about what we are doing. So this is what we are doing. What we are saying is that any American can go to any doctor, go to any hospital you want. You have freedom of choice regarding doctors and hospitals. In terms of older people, we're expanding Medicare to cover dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. And as you indicated, we do it over a 4-year period by going from 65, where the eligibility age is now, then down to 55, 45, 35, and then we cover everybody. Right now, we have what is the function? I want you to tell me this. What is the function of the healthcare system today? All right, you got it. The insurance companies and the drug companies combined, the healthcare industry last year made $100 billion in profit. Meanwhile, 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe. Over the last 20 years, the drug companies themselves have spent $4.5 billion, that's with a B, $billion on lobbying and campaign contributions in order to maintain this dysfunctional system. So I believe that the United States must do what every other major country on earth does. Guarantee comprehensive health care to all people. No deductibles, no copayments, no premiums. Okay, who wants to talk a little bit about health care, your own personal experiences? Anybody? Okay, yep, your own personal experiences with health care. Let's get a mic right here. Hold that up to your mouth.
Thank you. I work for teachers. I help negotiate their health benefits.
Yep.
And right now, today, we have public school teachers that their son was born with half a heart. And he's had 3 surgeries, and they're back in Boston right now for a 4th surgery that could save his life. And he was just denied by Anthem Blue Cross, and they were denied the appeal as well. This is union negotiated health care that has been denied to a public teacher, the child of a two public teachers. And I would also like to know what we can do to kind of demystify this whole aspect of union negotiated health plans being so wonderful when we have insurance companies denying. In addition, talking about the union members that are in Canada that have health care in Canada and their kids are not dying or being
I'm just
denied
kind of curious,
healthcare.
and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but what happens to, was it a boy who was dealing with a heart problem?
Yeah, they're in Boston right now.
All right, what
trying to
happens
get
to
the
him
surgery.
if he doesn't get the treatment that he needs?
He's going to remain, it'll be uncertain. He will continue to have an uncertain life because he's already had 3 heart surgeries, open heart surgeries. He was born with a heart defect.
In this country, thank you very much, in this country today, right now, and many of you have, how many of you have not gone to the doctor when you were sick and should have gone? Raise your hands. There you go. All right, that's the answer to the problem. What a rational healthcare system is about is when you're sick, you go to the doctor, okay? And that it makes financial sense as well, because if you don't go to the doctor when you should, there is a chance you'll get even sicker. And you'll end up in the hospital, and then the system spends a fortune on something that could have been easily prevented if you went to the doctor when you should have. Okay? So what we are going to do, the other point, and you touched on this point, is in Canada, if you have a procedure like this, say a major heart procedure, or a kidney transplant, or cancer surgery, who knows how much it costs in Canada to do that? Anyone know? Zero! And at the end of all of that, in Canada, they provide health care to all of their people. You never take out your wallet. You go to the doctor you want, you have a major procedure, you leave the hospital. I was up in Toronto 2 years ago, and they were very kind to me, and I went into a hospital, and I talked to some of the patients. And the patient said, look, I've just had major surgery. I'm going to do everything I can to get my feet back on the ground. I'm sick. I got to get well. But one thing I have that my American friends don't have, they got to worry about getting well, but they also have to worry about how they're going to pay the $100,000 bill. I don't have to do that in Canada. So that is what, and all of that, at the end of all of that, in Canada, they spend 50% of what we spend per person on health care. We spend $11,000 a year. And yet you got so many people who are uninsured, underinsured, can't afford prescription drugs. The function, and don't let anybody tell you anything different, the function of the current health care system is to make the insurance companies and the drug companies rich. And they could care less about the needs of that child or anybody else in this country. All right, I want discussion on health care. Health care. Gentleman right here.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. About 5-6 years ago, I was between jobs, and unfortunately, age discrimination and aging out of the job market is something to look at too, but specifically health care. My diabetes was out of control.
Diabetes.
And I was going blind. I didn't have insurance, and so I needed what's known as Avastin to correct a condition called macular edema. The treatment is about $1,600 a shot. So paying it out of my pocket was not a possibility. I actually went to, and we can all boo collectively, Congressman Issa's office. Thank you, I had a hunch we'd do that. And said, is it worth it to you for me to go blind? And that was the simple question. Thank God in California we do have Medi-Cal. Thank God that it kicked in. It paid 100% of what I needed. My right eye is 20/20, my left eye is 20/70. But this is, to me, the issue. Many of the things that people have that are problems can be easily corrected if they simply were able to have access to the treatment they need, and to not do it is as inhumane as ICE is, or locking people up in cages for simply trying to look for a better way of life. Thank you.
Okay, you mentioned what your first name is? Larry? All right, Larry mentioned he had lost his job. Well, you know what? Every day people lose their job. And when people talk about how great private insurance is, understand that every single year, some 50 million Americans change their private insurance policy. Maybe they change a job, maybe they lose their job, or maybe their employer simply changes their insurance policy. Happens every single day. The advantage of Medicare for all is if you got a job, if you don't have a job, you get coverage. If you want to quit your job, you don't have to worry about losing health insurance because you're still going to have it. It stays with you, not with your job. Okay. All right, maybe one more question, one more comment on health care. Health care? All right, we got a woman back there on health care. All right, let's get that mic to her.
Thank you, Bernie. In October 2017, my sister and I were at the Vegas mass shooting. And with all of the mass shootings taking place this week, my PTSD is through the roof. And I can't afford to see a therapist. It's just not possible. I'd have to pay out of pocket. And unfortunately, I know other survivors who are in the same position.
Okay. Everybody hear the question? She was tragically at the terrible shooting in Las Vegas, yes?
Yes.
And 50 some odd people were killed on that day. Many, many hundreds were wounded, but even those who were not wounded will live with that memory, I am sure, for the rest of their lives. And what she was saying is that when we see, and I'll talk about that in a moment, the horrible, horrible things we have seen this week, unspeakable things in El Paso and Dayton, this triggers up an emotion with her for what she has seen, and that's perfectly understandable. And she doesn't have the money to get the mental health counseling she needs. So when we talk about a healthcare crisis in this country, sometimes we forget that at the top of that list, one of the areas that we don't deal with, doing terribly at dealing with, is the mental health crisis in America. There are millions of people. This is, again, I keep saying this because I want everybody not to forget it. We are not a poor country. We're the richest country in the world. Why should she, who is hurting right now based on what she saw on the television, the horror that she saw triggering up these emotions, why should she not be able to call up somebody and go in and get some help today? But she can't. There aren't enough therapists. She doesn't have the out-of-pocket money that she needs to find that counseling. So when we talk about Medicare for all, it absolutely, positively means mental health care as well. All right, we still want to stay on health care for a minute? People want to stay on health care? Health care? Okay, yep. No, let me, all right, right here, yes. All right, help her.
I have a rare genetic disease that I was born with, a childhood disease. The doctor said I would live past the age of 5, and I'm now 32 years old. But I need 24-hour medical care around the clock. And I, too, am part of, luckily, thankfully, part of Medi-Cal that covers a lot of what I need. But as a person with a disability that requires 100% care that relies on the government, every time any budget things come up, I feel so panicked because I'm just a line on a budget that needs to be cut.
Right. As some of you may know, the President of the United States, when he ran for office, said he would not cut, some of you may remember that, he would not cut Medicaid, he would not cut Medicare, he would not cut Social Security. Take a look at his last 2 budgets. $1.5 trillion cut in Medicaid, all right? Massive cuts to Medicare and cuts to Social Security as well. So he lied again. But to answer your question, one of the things that we do in Medicare for All is we recognize the crisis in home health care right now. And it's not only for you. It is also who need 7-day-a-week help, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is for many seniors who do not want to go to a nursing home, would like some help in the house, somebody to cook for them, make the beds, and drop in and make sure that they're okay. Medicare for All covers home health care. All right? So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take that anxiety away from you. You're not going to worry about it. All right, you want to stay on health care for a minute? Anybody else? All right, we got a quiet right there, woman in white. Get way in the back there. All right. Let's get a mic there as quickly as we can.
Hi, thank you, Bernie. And thanks, everybody, for showing up. This is so awesome. It's a pleasure to address you. I'm a little emotional and a little embarrassed, but 6 years ago, I became a single mom and embarking on putting 2 kids through college. My son just graduated. But I was on healthcare. I was diagnosed with a rare disease that is going to require lifelong care and specialty doctors and very special medicine that's extremely hard to get. I was turned down all of last year from Blue Cross and finally got approved. But my concern, talking to friends and colleagues who live in other countries that have socialized medicine, that the real big dog diseases can have a cap. I just am wondering, under your plan, is there a cap?
No. Well, there is a cap in saying that nobody will have to pay more out of their own pocket than $200 for prescription drugs.
Okay.
That's the cap.
Thank
All
you.
right, again, I want to reiterate this because you don't see this on television. You just don't. And one of the reasons is that the pharmaceutical industry puts billions of dollars of ads on television, which influences television coverage of this. All right, but the bottom line is, and I repeat this again, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of other countries. And the reason we spend so much is that the function of our healthcare system is to make many billions in profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. When you end the profiteering, when you end the incredible bureaucracy and complexity of the current system, anybody here ever have to get on the phone arguing with an insurance company? All right.
Yes.
Their job is to deny you your claim. That's how they make more money, to discourage you, to make you fight for it month after month after month, so you give up and they make more money. They got hundreds of people whose job it is to tell you you're not covered when you thought you were covered. We're going to end all of that, and that's a saving of hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in all of that complexity and bureaucracy and billing. And that money goes to health care. All right. I think what I want to do, it's getting late, and we've been here for an hour and a half. All right, one more. Who's the one more? All right. All right. Oh, what? We got one back here. Anybody here? Okay. Get it to that woman. Okay, you guys have been, did you have a question? Did you have a question, ma'am? No.
Buenas tardes, señor senador. Mi pregunta es que si los inmigrantes que no tienen documentos van a recibir medical porque también pagan impuestos y en sus taxes tampoco les devuelven todo su dinero. ¿Qué hacen con ese dinero que no les devuelven?
Senator, my question is about immigrants who are undocumented. Will they receive Medicare for all, even though because they pay taxes, and when they pay taxes, they don't get the returns that others do? Will they be covered?
The answer is yes. Okay. All right, look, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and for many of you who could not get in here. I think we just touched the surface in terms of the economy and so many of our people working for inadequate wages, the inability of people to find affordable housing, the inability of people to find the quality health care they need, the fact that so many people in this community, in this state, and in many states of this country are traumatized by Trump's immigration policies. So we got a lot of work to do. In my view, this election coming up is the most important election in the modern history of our country. We're not only fighting for decent wages and health care and educational opportunity, we are fighting to protect the very essence of our democracy. From somebody who has very strong authoritarian tendencies. We are fighting, and we didn't even get into this tonight, and Margie touched on that. We are fighting to protect our planet. Because if we don't, in a very short time, move away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, I worry very, very much about the planet that we'll be leaving to our children and our grandchildren. All right, let me just conclude by saying this. Anyone who has studied American history understands that real change never takes place from the top on down. It is always from the bottom on up. Whether it was the union movement, whether it was the civil rights movement, whether it was the women's movement, whether it was the movement for gay rights or the environmental movement. Real change takes place when millions of people have the courage to stand up and fight back for justice. And that is what this effort is all about. Thank you all very much.